Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez is a Cuban politician and engineer. Mr. Díaz-Canel was born in April 1960, little over a year after Fidel Castro was first sworn in as Prime Minister. He studied electrical engineering and began his political career in his early 20s as a member of the Young Communist League in Santa Clara, a city which was the site of the last battle in the Cuban Revolution and which to this day is dominated by the Che Guevara mausoleum. While teaching engineering at the local university, he worked his way up the ranks of the Young Communist League, becoming its second secretary at the age of 33. He also played a key role in the Communist Party in his native province of Villa Clara. During his time at the helm of the provincial government, it was said to have enjoyed more freedoms than other parts of the country. Despite his steady work at provincial level, it took Mr. Díaz-Canel another 10 years, until 2003, to make it onto the Politburo, the Communist Party's executive committee. In 2009, he was elevated to the post of Minister of Higher Education, and in 2013 he finally made it to Vice President. His steady rise and ideological firmness were praised by the man who has been his main backer, Raúl Castro. At the time that he made him his number two, Mr. Castro insisted that Mr. Díaz-Canel was no upstart, a compliment in a party which has been dominated by those who fought alongside Fidel Castro in the revolution in the 1950s. In 2018, Mr. Díaz-Canel was overwhelmingly elected as Cuban president by the National Assembly. 3 years later, he was appointed as the first secretary of the PCC, again replacing Raúl Castro. The son of a factory worker and a schoolteacher, Díaz-Canel grew up in Villa Clara province, about 180 miles, 290 kilometers, east of Havana. He studied electrical engineering at Central University Marta Abreu of Las Villas in Santa Clara, graduating in 1982. That year he entered the Army, in which he served until 1985. His military service included a stint in an anti-aircraft missile unit as well as assignment to a detachment that provided personal security for both Raúl and Fidel Castro. Later, while teaching engineering at his alma mater, Díaz-Canel became active in the Young Communist League, Unión de Jóvenes Comunistas. In 1987, still in his mid-20s, he was appointed the Communist Party's liaison to socialist-ruled Nicaragua, a crucial ally of Cuba. At age 33 he became second secretary of the Young Communist League. In becoming the first secretary of the Communist Party in Villa Clara province in 1994, Díaz-Canel joined a select group of provincial partisans whose power and influence was growing as Cuba's political system became increasingly pluralistic. He would later hold the same position in Holguin, the home province of the Castros. His ascendance came during Cuba's special period, a time of extreme economic hardship brought about by the withdrawal of financial and material support from the Soviet Union as a result of its dissolution in 1991. With petroleum in short supply, Díaz-Canel gained attention for choosing to walk or ride a bicycle to work rather than be driven in the government-provided automobile to which he was entitled. Admirers pointed to this action as proof of his down-to-earth everyman qualities. Skeptics characterized it as posturing compromised by the gasoline used by the vehicle-borne security detail that shadowed him. The soft-spoken Díaz-Canel developed a reputation as a good listener and an accessible even-handed public servant. An often repeated anecdote describes how during an electrical blackout in Villa Clara, Díaz-Canel not only directed the effort to restore power but also went from bed to bed in the provincial hospital apologizing to the patients, including a political dissident who had landed in the hospital as a result of his anti-government hunger strike. Díaz-Canel's long-standing support for a local LGBTQ nightclub was also frequently cited as a reflection of his supposedly liberal outlook. In 1997 Díaz-Canel joined the 14-member Politburo, which functioned as Fidel Castro's senior advisors. He was the youngest member of the body in its history. His tenure as a provincial party secretary came to an end in 2003. In 2009 Raúl Castro named him Minister of Higher Education, which remained Díaz-Canel's portfolio until March 2012, when he became one of 8 vice presidents of the Council of Ministers, with responsibility for education, science, culture, and sports. The next year he was appointed to the Council of State and was elected its vice president in February 2013, becoming the first person born after the Cuban Revolution to hold that office. Among his high-profile, if largely ceremonial, assignments as vice president were representing the country at the funeral of Venezuelan Pres. Hugo Chavez, one of Cuba's essential allies, and meeting with Russian Pres. Vladimir Putin in Moscow and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang, as well as attending the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris in 2015. Díaz-Canel represented a new generation of Cuban leadership that had not been forged by participation in the revolution. His style was markedly different from the aging revolutionaries who had dominated communist Cuba since its inception. In place of suits or fatigues, he sported open-collared guayabera shirts, jeans, and even Bermuda shorts. He wore his hair long and made no secret of his appreciation of rock music, especially the Beatles. An advocate for social and economic modernization and champion of increased internet access for Cubans, Díaz-Canel often carried a computer tablet with him and maintained a personal Facebook page. His friends included musicians, artists, and other intellectuals. 2 of his children have been members of a well-known Cuban rock group, Polaroid. Yet for all of his seemingly forward-looking characteristics, Díaz-Canel also appeared to be a politician who was more than capable of adhering to the party line. Most notably, in 2017 a video surfaced in which Díaz-Canel, speaking to a group of party officials, castigated the United States and argued that Cuba was under no obligation to satisfy the terms of the reconciliation agreement reached with U.S. Pres. Barack Obama. In the video, Díaz-Canel also excoriated a website that he characterized as subversive and pledged to shut it down, regardless of potential accusations of censorship. Some observers felt the video had been leaked purposefully to establish Díaz-Canel's bona fides as a hardliner and to make him more palatable to conservative elements within the government. In any case, on April 19, 2018, when Raúl Castro stepped down as President of the Council of State and the Council of Ministers, he was replaced by Díaz-Canel, whom Castro had anointed as his successor. In 2019 the amended constitution transformed Díaz-Canel's office to the President of the Republic, while adding the post of Prime Minister to oversee the government's day-to-day operation. Castro retained the powerful office of Secretary General of the Communist Party. At age 57 Díaz-Canel was arguably on the doorstep of senior citizenship, but he was a babe in the woods compared with the typical high-level Cuban government official. Among the departures from tradition of the Díaz-Canel presidency was the public visibility of his second wife, Liz Cuesta, then Director of Academic Services for the cultural tourism agency Paradiso. The appearance of spouses at the side of leaders had been denigrated as a convention of bourgeois politics by the Castros, whose wives were seldom seen in public, but Cuesta became a prominent presence who acted more like a first lady. Although Raúl Castro had retained leadership of the party, he indicated that he planned to relinquish that position too in 2021. Despite the fact that the Cuban economy was reeling as a result of the reimposition of restrictions on U.S. travel to the island, disruptions to the supply of cheap petroleum from Venezuela, and especially the effects of the global coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, Castro made good on his pledge and officially retired as Secretary General at the 8th Congress of the Communist Party of Cuba in April 2021. 2 days after Castro stepped down, he was replaced by Díaz-Canel. Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez is a Cuban politician and engineer. He has served as the 8th First Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba since 2021 and as the 17th President of Cuba since 2019. In his capacity as First Secretary he is the most powerful person in the Cuban government. Díaz-Canel succeeded the brothers Fidel and Raúl Castro, becoming Cuba's first non-Castro leader since its revolution and its first non-Castro head of state since 1976. He has been a member of the Politburo of the Communist Party since 2003. He served as Minister of Higher Education from 2009 until 2012, when he was promoted to Vice President of the Council of Ministers, Deputy Prime Minister. A year later, in 2013, he was elected as first Vice President of the Council of State. He succeeded Raúl Castro as the President of the Council of State in 2018. In December 2019 this office evolved into President of the Republic. On April 19, 2021, Díaz-Canel assumed the reins of the Communist Party when he replaced Raúl Castro as first secretary. Díaz-Canel was born on April 20, 1960 in Placetas, Villa Clara, to Aida Bermúdez, a schoolteacher, and Miguel Limón, a mechanical plant worker in Santa Clara, Cuba. He is of direct paternal Spanish-Asturian descent. His great-grandfather Ramón Díaz-Canel left Castropol, Asturias, Spain for Havana in the late 19th century. He graduated from Central University of Las Villas in 1982 as an electronics engineer and thereupon joined the Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces. Beginning in April 1985, he taught engineering at his alma mater. In 1987, he completed an international mission in Nicaragua as first secretary of the Young Communist League of Villa Clara. In 1993, Díaz-Canel started work with the Communist Party of Cuba and a year later was elected first secretary of the Provincial Party Committee of Villa Clara Province, a top position higher than a governor. He gained a reputation for competence in this post, during which time it is reported that he supported LGBT rights at a time when many in the province frowned upon homosexuality. In 2003, he was elected to the same position in Holguin Province. In the same year, he was co-opted as a member of the Politburo of the Communist Party of Cuba. Díaz-Canel was appointed Minister of Higher Education in May 2009, a position that he held until March 22, 2012, when he became Vice President of the Council of Ministers, Deputy Prime Minister. In 2013 he additionally became first Vice President of the Council of State. As first Vice President of the Council of State, Díaz-Canel acted as deputy to the President, Raúl Castro. In 2018, the 86-year-old Castro stepped down from the position as President of the Council of State and the Council of Ministers, though he retained the most powerful position of First Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba and the Commander-in-Chief of the Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces. On April 18, 2018, Díaz-Canel was selected as the only candidate to succeed Castro as president. He was confirmed by a vote of the National Assembly on April 19 and sworn in on the same day. He is the first president born after the 1959 Cuban Revolution and the first since 1976 not to be a member of the Castro family. He received a visit from Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro just 2 days after his inauguration. He met with Maduro again in May 2018 in Caracas, during his first official foreign visit as head of state. In his first multinational political trip since becoming president, Díaz-Canel traveled in November 2018 to visit all of Cuba's Eurasian allies. Diplomatic meetings were held in Russia, North Korea, China, Vietnam, and Laos. Brief stopovers in the United Kingdom and France also included meetings with British parliamentarians and French leaders. In March 2019, Díaz-Canel and his wife hosted Charles, Prince of Wales and Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall in Havana as the first British royals to visit the island. In October 2019, Díaz-Canel became the President of the Republic of Cuba, an office that was recreated that February after a series of constitutional reforms were approved in a constitutional referendum. This office replaced the one he had held since April of the previous year, which was the President of the Council of State, which was previously the head of state of Cuba. The position of President of the Council of State became a less important position and is now carried out by Esteban Lazo Hernández in his authority as the President of the National Assembly of People's Power. Díaz-Canel's reforms, among other things, limited the presidency to 2 consecutive 5-year terms and banned discrimination based on gender, gender identity, or sexual orientation. His government also reformed the country's family code in 2022, after a referendum was approved, which, among other things, legalized same-sex marriage, same-sex adoption, and altruistic surrogacy. These policies have been described as the most progressive in Latin America. His administration has suppressed dissent, particularly surrounding the 2021 Cuban protests triggered by the worsening of the COVID-19 pandemic, suggested combating the country's food crisis with pizza, garapo, and lemonade, changed the currency system. During the protests, he said, the order of combat has been given, into the streets, revolutionaries. On April 19, 2021, he officially became the first secretary of the Communist Party following the resignation of Raúl Castro. This made him the leader of Cuba in fact as well as in name. BBC News stated that Díaz-Canel is loyal to the Castros' ideologies. During the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Cuban government blamed the United States for the crisis in Ukraine and backed Russia's right to self-defense against NATO expansion, but did not endorse the invasion, saying the conflict should be resolved diplomatically. Díaz-Canel visited Vladimir Putin in Moscow in November 2022, and the two leaders criticized Western sanctions against Cuba and Russia. They also opened a monument to Fidel Castro in one of the Moscow's districts. On April 19, 2023, Díaz-Canel was re-elected by the National Assembly for a second five-year term as president, along with Salvador Valdez as vice president. Despite the difficult economic conditions facing the country, his re-election was widely expected and received widespread support from the Assembly members, with 97.66% backing Díaz-Canel's proposal and 93.4% supporting Valdez. The president was praised by the Assembly members for his leadership in difficult circumstances and for prioritizing collective work, innovation, and science. In December 2023, Díaz-Canel condemned the genocide of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and called Israel a terrorist state. He joined a pro-Palestine demonstration in Havana. On October 15, 2024, he led a pro-Palestinian demonstration in Havana. Díaz-Canel has two children from his marriage to his first wife, Marta Villanueva, which ended in divorce. He currently resides with his second wife, Liz Cuesta. On March 23, 2021, Díaz-Canel obtained a PhD in technical sciences, defending a thesis titled Government Management System based on Science and Innovation for Sustainable Development in Cuba. Thank you for watching this video.